Welcome, everyone, to Positive Intelligence, the new webinar in Rypple's award-winning leadership series. We are incredibly excited to have a guest with us today who's one of the most influential executive coaches, leadership thinkers on the planet, Shirzad Chamine. His new book, Positive Intelligence, which is now on both the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller list, is an incredibly practical and useful guide on how to train our minds to help us achieve our true potential. Just a couple of housekeeping items right at the top. I wanted to let you know that we're going to have some interactive features in today's presentation, so look forward to that. We want to make sure that you stay involved and engaged throughout the presentation. We're also going to be holding a Q&A at the end of today's session, and so you will be able to send in your questions throughout, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as they can. Finally, for those of you who are interested, we are going to be making the recording and the slides of today's session available afterwards. So before I introduce Shirzad and tell you a little bit more about his work, I'd like to take a moment to talk about what we do at Rypple to enable our customers to improve their performance at work. We are in an incredibly exciting time right now, a time when social technology is transforming our ability to align, engage, and motivate our people in new ways. And it's also changing our very notions of what work can be. And in our work at Rypple with customers like Facebook and LinkedIn and Spotify and thousands of other very high-performing organizations, we found that there are really three key ingredients to a successful workplace culture. And you can see them right in front of you here. Coaching people on a regular basis, one-on-one, recognizing them for doing great work right when it happens, and providing frequent ongoing feedback to people on what they're doing well and what they can improve. And today, I just want to spend a moment talking to you about the importance of coaching. You know, in the sports world, coaches have become iconic figures who are as well known as the superstar athletes on their teams. And whether it's calling plays on the sidelines or making adjustments to a golfer's swing, real-time instruction from a great coach is understood to be the best way for players to develop and improve. But for some reason, when it comes to the workplace, what employees often get instead of a coach is a manager, someone who pops by occasionally to tell them what they did wrong. And as a result, instead of feeling inspired by a mentor, many times workers end up dreading the next run-in with the boss, who in turn feels like he or she is trying to turn the ship when it's too late after it's already slammed into that iceberg. I think the reason we found for this is many organizations today have delegated management to the HR department instead of making it a crucial part of every manager's responsibility, whether you run a sales team or a marketing organization or a group of software developers. And I think Rypple was designed to provide managers and teams with the tools they need to stay aligned and engaged with their work. The question, of course, is what's the best way to deploy this toolkit once you have it? And that's where today's guest comes in. So Shirzad Chamine is the chairman of CTI, which is the largest coach training organization in the world. CTI has trained coaches and managers in most of the Fortune 500, as well as faculty members at Stanford and Yale business schools. Shirzad is a preeminent C-suite advisor, and he's coached hundreds of CEOs and executive teams on how to do those things that I was just discussing. His background includes PhD studies in neuroscience, as well as a BA in psychology, an MS in electrical engineering, and an MBA from Stanford, where he lectures today. So many letters there behind and in front of Shirzad's name. In his new book, Positive Intelligence, Shirzad takes seminal ideas from a lot of different places, including psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and modern neuroscience, and brings them together in a very practical guide and model for success. And I think today we're really excited to learn about the importance of developing what Shirzad has termed PQ. He's going to share with you how you can learn to identify the obstacles that prevent each of us from achieving our potential, and then how to train ourselves to overcome those obstacles. He's a very highly sought-after speaker and lecturer, and we're very excited to have him with us today. So Shirzad, welcome, and I'd now like to turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. This is Shirzad. It's a pleasure to be with everybody, and thank you so much, everyone, in today's busy lives and schedules to make the time to be here. I will hope to be making it worthwhile. What I'd like to start with is just the kind of the subtitle of my book, and which is the theme of the conversation today. Positive Intelligence, the subtitle of the book is Why Do Only 20% of us, of individuals and teams, achieve our true potential? That number will actually make sense to you later on. It's not an arbitrary number. It's based on solid research. And I'll show you later where that came from. And rather than just asking the question why, I would also like to help answer the question, so what do you do about that, and how can you or your team become one of the 20% category rather than the 80% category that does not reach its true potential? Through the course of this talk, I hope to be able to answer some of the types of questions that I have on this slide, which are things such as, why does positive change typically fizzle? Just think about your own experience. What percentage of team retreats that you do, your EQ or leadership development workshops that you have done, the New Year's resolutions that you're familiar with, actually last after those events or fizzle, and typical experience is that they fizzle. Why do some athletes choke when it really matters? Why do we search so hard to get to a place where we think we're going to be happy through some achievement or attainment, and the happiness lasts a very short period of time? And why are we nagged at 3 a.m. constantly with these recycling thoughts that have no redeeming value but to keep us awake at night? Where do those come from, and why can't we control those? And the answer to all of these questions and many more is one word, and it is sabotage. And what I mean by sabotage is not some external force to you sabotaging you, or some nasty guy on your team or company cutting you down, but you doing it to yourself and me doing it to myself. So the sabotage we're talking about here is about self-sabotage, and that's a big part of the identification of your positive intelligence and why it is that you do or don't reach your full potential. So let me get to the definition of positive intelligence that brings the word sabotage into context. Positive intelligence, the way I have defined it here, is that it is the percentage of time that your mind is serving you as opposed to sabotaging you. So right off the bat, we are leading with a premise that says every one of us in our mind spend some portion of time sabotaging ourselves. And I can tell you, after working with hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, I have not yet run into any human being who does not do some self-sabotage. It's a universal condition, and I will get into telling you why and showing you how that happens to be a universal condition. It's not unique to certain individuals. It is a condition of being a human being. And clearly, when you look at this, then the question is, how does one increase the percentage of time that mind is serving you, decrease the percentage of time that your mind is sabotaging you? That ends up elevating your level of positive intelligence, and I will show you that that ends up elevating a whole lot of other performance measures and happiness measures based on research. What you just saw happen to your slide is underneath mind sabotaging you, I have added the word saboteurs. Those are, for lack of any better words, I use the word characters. Those are characters in your mind, and they are the ones who cause the sabotage, as opposed to sage, which is the part of your mind that does the opposite, that actually serves you. And to give you a little bit more idea before we go on too much farther, I just added a few of the names of the saboteurs so that you have a sense of what we are talking about. There are 10 of them altogether, and the ones that you see are sampling of these saboteurs: the judge, controller, victim, stickler, avoider. And what I will show you is that everyone that you know, everyone you work with, and yourself included, are being sabotaged by one or more of these characters. And you can learn to actually reduce the power of those characters and increase the power of the sage inside your mind, the part of your brain that actually serves you, so that you have these outcomes that we are talking about. What I'd like to show you next is the impact and influence of this work. The headline of this is examples of higher PQ results. PQ stands for Positive Intelligence Quotient, and it is that number, that score that I mentioned earlier. It is the percentage of time your mind is serving you as opposed to sabotaging you. That's your PQ score, Positive Intelligence. And in the book, there are a few chapters where I show through a synthesis of research, groundbreaking research in positive psychology, cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and organizational science, that increasing your positive intelligence score, your PQ, has very, very direct correlations with things such as salespeople selling 37% more, teams performing 31% better when their leader increases his or her PQ to a higher PQ range. For doctors, medical diagnosis being more accurate, up to 3 times more creative, and a whole lot happier. I don't know what is more important to you, being more successful or being happier. Positive intelligence impacts both. So depending on what is your angle to being motivated, you might want to look at that happiness or as just as important as the performance measures of what happens for you if you increase your positive intelligence. And I will show you through this talk 3 strategies to be able to increase your positive intelligence or that of your teams. This picture, which I am just choosing to share as a reminder for you, is one that I want to use to help remind you by looking at this beautiful child that you yourself started as a child full of wonder and possibility, and that this is the way all human beings begin in life. And then the problem is that most of us begin to become a shadow of ourselves, and the mechanism where that begins to happen is the mechanism of the saboteurs. So our job here is not to help you change, but help you actually remember that you were a person with full possibility and potential, and something happened along the line that started having you forget your full possibility, and we want to help you remember that and reconnect back to your full power. And to bring this home, make it personal, I want to share with you of my own story of how I started to forget, because I don't want this to be an ivory tower, Ivy League research conversation. I want it to be personal and to be based on real experiences. And this is a picture I have placed here, and the title for it is Erosion of Potential. This is actually my picture of myself when I was only 2 years old, and it's the beginning of me forgetting my potential. You look at this picture and you know this person is not really in touch with their full power and possibility like that other picture was, and the mechanism of this happening was the mechanism of the saboteurs. And I want to tell you in a second how that happened. I'm getting a signal, by the way, from my phone that the battery on this phone is dying. If it happens, I will be able to dial in within 30 seconds. So if that happens, don't worry about it. I'll be right back. So basically, what was happening in my childhood is that I was getting up in a ghetto with some very difficult childhood scenario of parents who weren't really there and nurturing and support that wasn't there. And what is happening here is the formation of saboteurs in me. I'll be able to tell you a little bit later on about how saboteurs are a mechanism of the mind that come to help you survive the challenges that you face as a child, to your emotional survival and physical survival. That's why they are universal. They are a universal pattern. And what was happening for me was the beginning of the thought pattern that since my parents did not really show me much love and affection, the reason for that was that I was not worthy of much love and affection. That was the formation of this judge saboteur in my mind that was beginning to denigrate me as somebody who was not worthy of much. And the reason that saboteur, like all other saboteurs, was actually very helpful in my childhood was that it allowed me to make sense of my experience, because my only other option would have been to say that my parents were flawed and unworthy parents and that they did not know what they were doing, which would have actually been terrifying for a child to believe that their parents are flawed people. So this judgment, self-judgment, allowed me to keep my parents as perfect beings so that life would not be as terrifying, and instead say that there was something wrong with me. And oh, by the way, I started judging everybody else around me because now I had to also say other people are flawed so that I wouldn't be so scared being the only flawed person in the world. This was the beginning of my judge-saboteur formation. Yours might be different. You might have had a good childhood without nearly as many problems, but all of us actually end up getting saboteurs, whether we are brought up in good parenting or not. What I was pointing out to was that my experience was not a unique one. Think about it. Even if you have a fine childhood, there are fears in your life. Your mother is sick in the hospital. You never know whether she's going to come back or not. Somebody's school is taller than you, smarter than you, faster than you, better than you as an athlete. Your brother is getting a little bit more attention than you are, or at least you think you are. There are a lot of dangers to our emotional survival as a child, and the saboteurs are a construct for us to take care of ourselves, and mine was in that form. So the main issue with the saboteurs is that while they get formed early on and are helpful, they remain in our mind in a way that's become invisible, so we have no idea that they actually are operating in our mind. And what happened to me is, this is a picture of Stanford University. When I was a student, MBA student at Stanford University, at the age of 27 years old, I only then discovered that I actually had been sabotaged by this very, very powerful judge voice in my head, because I was sitting in a class called Interpersonal Dynamics. There was a group of fellow students in this exercise where we were supposed to tell each other the truth, and what happened is pretty much everybody told me that they found me incredibly judgmental. And I honestly had absolutely no idea. I was stunned that that was the case, because this way of being judgmental was one that had become such a way of life for me that I had no idea I was doing it. It was a lens I was wearing that was completely transparent to me. And it was only then that I discovered and exposed this judge saboteur. Most saboteurs are in your head without you knowing that they are even there. They become a lens through which you see life. I want to spend just a couple of minutes about why this mechanism happens from a neuroscience perspective. Basically, the most important thing I want you to know about this is that you literally are of two brains. You have the survival brain, I call it. It's a region of the brain that primarily is focused on physical and emotional survival. Consists of brainstem, limbic system, and a lot of its function does draw from the left brain. as opposed to what I call the PQ brain, your positive intelligence brain, which consists of your middle prefrontal cortex, a region that I call the empathy circuitry, and more of the right brain functions. You literally, neurochemically, are of two brains. And it has a big consequence which brain is active at any time of the day that you're operating. If you are in the survival brain, your focus is obviously about survival, physical or emotional survival, and the voice that the survival brain uses is the voice of the saboteurs. The survival brain regions rise to the construct of the saboteurs. Whether you have the judge, the controller, the stickler, the victim, the avoider, any of those saboteurs, they are basically being fueled by this region of the brain. The problem with this region of the brain is that it's not designed to help you feel peace or any calm or happiness, a lasting happiness, because survival actually doesn't benefit from you feeling at peace. You feeling paranoid and concerned and anxious all the time is good from an evolutionary perspective for the survival of the species. That's why the survival brain is so powerful and dominant. The PQ brain is a region that has you feel entirely different sensations. If you look at the emotions that it generates, the emotions that you experience from the PQ brain activation are emotions of curiosity, compassion, joy, creativity, peace, calm, resolve, as opposed to much of the anxiety, anger, disappointment, shame, guilt that's produced when you're in survival brain. And here's the problem. The problem is that most of us are running perpetually on a low-grade fight-and-flight survival brain function. And the problem with that is that even if you achieve every goal in your life, even if you attain all of your objectives and get everything that you thought would make you happy, you will still have very little peace and very little happiness, because this region of your brain is literally not wired to enable you or allow you to feel any peace and lasting happiness. It just isn't wired for it. Your only choice is to learn how to shift to that other region of your brain. The good news is that there are very simple tools and techniques that I can show you to be able to do that. There are basically three different strategies to be able to increase your positive intelligence and get those results that I mentioned earlier. One is to strengthen, well, the first one, I'll start with number one in the middle. The first one is to weaken your saboteurs. If those are the bad guys in your mind, then you want to weaken the bad guys. The obvious second one is to go to the positive side and to strengthen your sage, the good guy in your head, based on a very different region of your brain. And the third one is just go to the brain itself and strengthen your PQ brain. There are really simple 10-second exercises that allow you to strengthen your PQ brain. These three strategies are independent of each other. You don't have to do them all. Just one or two would do just fine. If you do them together, they snowball on each other, but they are independent of each other. If you focus on strategy number one, which is weaken your saboteurs, these are the names of all the 10 saboteurs. If you have a hard time reading it on this slide, don't worry, there's going to be another slide with them delineated better. And the judge is the one that has darker color there, and the reason that I have the darker colors is that the judge is the only universal saboteur. This one is the only one that every single human being has. The other ones, you may have the controller, your neighbor may have the victim, your colleague may have the hyper-rational, different people have different saboteurs. And by the way, there is an assessment of saboteurs, a free assessment of your saboteurs that you can find on positiveintelligence.com. There's an assessment of, it only takes 5 minutes, and you can find out which of the 10 saboteurs you have, but hopefully you'll do that after the call, not now, because there are some very important things that I want to share with you now. But first let's start with the judge saboteur and give you a little bit more sense of what this character is about. The judge is constantly finding fault with yourself, others, and events and circumstances in life. And it's the source of most of your unhappiness, anxiety, anger, disappointment, guilt, and shame. Just to make sure you know how universal these things are, I thought something that would be powerful for me to do is to share with you an experience I just recently had with a group of 150 CEOs. These are very, very highly accomplished people. Obviously, they're CEOs of important companies. And to test the theory that every single person has some nasty self-judgment going on, I asked them to write on anonymous 3x5 cards what are the self-judgments that they do, what are the ways that they torture themselves, and in the privacy of their own life, what are the things they don't share with others that is the way that the voice in their head is constantly torturing them. And here is, they wrote on these 3x5 cards, and I have a sampling of them, the 150. I'll just go randomly through them right now and read some of them for you. And remember, again, these are very, very successful, high-achieving CEOs. So here are the cards. I often don't like the person I am at work. I feel guilty about not caring as deeply as I could about my employees. I have no idea how to truly connect with my only son. I worry that my actions don't match my morals or convictions. I have a drug and alcohol issue. I worry about having a nervous breakdown and having to drop out of society. I'm feeling very sad and lonely, and the antidepressants I'm on don't seem to be helping. I'm fearful that I'm not smart enough or courageous enough to make the next investment or direction for my company. Fear of making mistakes that will put me in unrecoverable financial harm. I feel I am an ineffective manager and a chronic procrastinator. I'm over my head in the complexity of my company and economy. I don't think my wife and I are meant to be together. I wish I could run away for 1 year, just be alone. I'm afraid I will die one day without having had any impact on my world. I worry my leadership skills don't measure up, and I'm holding back the potential of my company. I'm terrified of being alone in my life. I'm not going to continue reading these in the interest of time, but this is a random sampling. There's one other one that I do want to read. Afraid of ending up like my father, who is unloved and will die alone. And in my work with people, this sampling is actually quite ordinary. This is the way people's lives are. We pretend that we are having these clean and perfect lives to the outside world, but inside we are busy torturing ourselves, thinking there's something especially broken about us, and we torture ourselves privately, and the voice that is used to torture us is the voice of the saboteurs. I'd like to move on and show you just a sampling of the groupings of the saboteurs. There are 9 of them, as I said before, and they are categorized in a grid. It's not important for us to understand how these categories work right now. For now, it's important for you to know that there are a variety of saboteurs, and you have the judge, some variation of the judge, and then 1 or 2 of these other ones, and you can find yourself which one. This is a very, very short and brief quick synopsis of what each of the saboteurs is about. Again, I don't expect us right now to go through and understand each of these. I just wanted to know the brief description of how each of them are. The key thing I wanted to make sure you understand is that each of these saboteurs has lied to you and convinced you that it is your best buddy, and that you actually need this saboteur in order to be successful and effective and happy. So you may be thinking, gee, I am a hyperachiever, or I am a hyper-rational, or I am a pleaser. These are good things. I'm a controller. I wouldn't be able to get anything done without a controller or without the judge. But these are all the lies of these saboteurs to make you believe that they're your friend. You can actually achieve everything you need to achieve with the power of your sage rather than the negative powers of your saboteurs. What I like to do now is a quick poll. And what I like to do, the poll, it has one question. The question is, based on information thus far, I believe, A, I do have saboteurs that cause significant harm to reaching my full potential for success or happiness. B, I don't have saboteurs that cause significant harm. And C, I don't know. I don't know yet. And Nick, do I turn it to you to get the poll going?
Sure. I think everyone can just submit their own questions, and then as soon as those questions have been answered, we should be able to very quickly see the answers up on the screen.
So I'm assuming the poll is on the screen right now.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And by the way, this is anonymous. Please feel free to really reflect how you're feeling. This is fully anonymous. I do have the saboteurs that cause significant harm to reaching my full potential. I don't have them, and I don't know yet. We may want to just give people another 5 seconds or so and then begin to close the poll down and then see the results.
It looks like 82% of people say that they do have saboteurs. Only 4% say that they don't, and 14% don't know. So the overwhelming majority seem to be weighing in that they do have significant issues as a result of saboteurs.
Great. That's a very honest answer. And this next slide is strategy number 2 of the way to increase PQ. I just wanted to, from the previous slide, to show you that the saboteur strategy is one that you can always use because it is the saboteur condition is a universal condition, and you can begin to learn to weaken it. The first step of doing that, by the way, is to identify your saboteurs. Do the saboteur assessment. An enemy that is visible is far easier to target than an enemy that is pretending it's your friend. So the first step is identify your saboteurs, and from there, there are some strategies in the book and some strategies in the assessment report that you'll get that will help you learn how to weaken those saboteurs. The second strategy here is to focus on increasing the power of your sage. There are 5 powers here. These are the power to explore, to emphasize, to innovate, to navigate, and to activate. We don't have time to go into each one of these 5, but what I can tell you is that you can absolutely look at every challenge, in your work or life, and find a way to resolve that challenge using the positive powers of the sage by exploring and finding out more of what needs to be known about the challenge, by empathizing with yourself or others in that situation before you move into action, by innovating, doing out-of-box creative thinking about what solutions you can bring to bear, by navigating. What we mean by that is making sure you choose an option that is aligned with your values and your purpose in life. And if you're a team, making decisions that is aligned with the values and purpose of your team. And finally, activate is about taking action decisively without all the drama and all the bombastic energies or the negativity or the anger or upset or stress of the saboteurs. You just move into calm action. I call it samurai action. where you take action decisively without any of the emotional drama in a very centered, calm way. And you can achieve every outcome that you want using these powers without needing to be a controller, a judge, a stickler, any of those other things. Each of these powers has a power, what I call a power game, that helps you get deeper access to that particular power. For example, a power game for empathize is visualize the child. And what that is you imagine the person in front of you that you're not feeling much empathy for. You imagine them as what they must have looked like when they were 5 years old. It is really hard for you to imagine somebody as the 5-year-old that they were without having some more empathy and caring or understanding about them, because, again, back to the picture I showed you earlier, that is where the person's true essence and full potential was when they were born. And that little quick thing in the back of your mind will have you feel more empathy towards the person and be able to shift in a different part of your brain. The next slide, if you move to the next slide, is the sage perspective. And the sage perspective is that absolutely everything, every challenge, every problem, every event, every outcome is either an actual gift or opportunity in a visible way, or it can be turned into a gift and opportunity. So absolutely everything that happens, even if you lose your biggest client, what the sage will do is it'll have you quickly recover from being upset about it, and then ask yourself actively, how do I turn this into a gift and opportunity? And I can guarantee you everything can be turned into a gift and opportunity if the sage, rather than the saboteurs, get involved in interacting with that issue or challenge. The sage and the saboteurs are self-fulfilling prophecies. So if something quote-unquote bad happens and your judge is all upset about it and your controller is all uptight about it, chances are that the bad situation will spiral down into an even worse situation, and sure enough, that will be a bad outcome. If you shift to a sage and say, how do I turn this into a gift and opportunity, you immediately shift the energies of your mind. Your brain literally shifts to the PQ brain, which is much more in touch with creativity and possibility and curiosity and better solutions, and you will, in a self-fulfilling prophecy, be able to actually turn the thing into a gift and opportunity. So both these ways of looking at things are each of them self-fulfilling prophecies. Do you choose the saboteur way or do you choose the sage way when challenges happen in life? I'm not going to get into the stallion story. It's in the book. It's a fascinating story, and it kind of really brings to life the fact that this sage perspective I talked about is the only sane way to live. The judge perspective is relatively insane, and unfortunately most of us are prone to that. Please go to the next slide, where we are looking at again, the headline is 3 strategies to increase PQ, and this one is the third strategy. The third strategy is strengthening your PQ brain. The good news, really good news, is that even though the PQ brain has so much more power and potential than the survival brain, activating the PQ brain is actually very simple to do. The way you activate your PQ brain is by bringing your attention for at least 10 seconds into any of your 5 physical sensations, into, for example, right this moment as you're sitting on your chair, if you bring your attention for 10 seconds to feel the weight of your body on your seat, or to feel the weight of your feet on the floor, or to hear the ambient sounds in the room, or to feel the texture of the telephone if you're holding one. Doesn't matter which of your 5 senses, so long as you bring your attention as much as you can to one of your 5 physical sensations, then it is activating the PQ brain. Now, that's not going to change your life by itself, because what you have literally done is you lift a dumbbell. Let's say you just lifted a 20-pound dumbbell with your bicep muscle. One repetition isn't going to change you, but trust me, if you do 100 repetitions a day and do that 21 days in a row, you are going to have built such brain muscles in the PQ brain region that you will literally feel different, go through a day, go through the challenges of your life, you will be much more naturally in touch with the sage powers and perspective, and it takes away the oxygen from the survival brain where the saboteurs come from. So think about each of these as a lifting of the dumbbell by the muscles of your PQ brain. You need to do 100 of these. In the book, I have many, many examples of how you can do this while you're eating breakfast or taking a shower or jogging or sitting in a meeting. You can be doing them at any time of day or night. Next slide is a slide I call a PQ vortex. There is a mathematically proven number that was done by Marshall Losada and Barbara Fredrickson, who are eminent researchers in the field that I have relied on for some of my work. And the mathematical modeling basically is about an inflection point at 75, PQ score of 75. A fundamental shift happens in your mind or in your team where you'll start feeling uplifted by the energy in your mind or the energy in the team. Things just become so much easier. And below 75, things do have a tendency to drag down. It's a little bit like flying with a tailwind or a headwind. You will get to your destination, but it's just so much easier if you have a tailwind than a headwind. And the threshold is a PQ score of 75. And only 20% of individuals and teams score above 75. Only 20% of teams and individuals score PQ above 75, which is why the subtitle of my book is Why Only 20% of Teams and Individuals Achieve Their True Potential. Next slide is about how achievement is connected to potential versus PQ. The main point here is that we are often too busy building an already huge potential. But your potential is made up of your IQ, your skills, your knowledge, your experience, your EQ. Already, you and the people working for you have huge, gigantic potential that's mostly going untapped. So to spend more time in a workshop to build yet another skill is not going to be nearly as powerful because it will only incrementally increase your already high potential. The much faster way to increase your achievement would be to increase PQ, because PQ you can increase very dramatically in 21 days. You can increase PQ easily by a third in 21 days and have a huge impact. So if you're trying to increase your achievement of either your performance, your success, or happiness, your better investment will be in increasing your PQ than to incrementally increase your potential. The final slide is one where graphically I'm showing why I believe that PQ, with IQ and EQ, you can only go so far in reaching your potential, and the rest of the way you need PQ to get there. And the very final slide is one where I'm inviting you to visit positiveintelligence.com to be able to do your PQ score assessment, which takes 2 minutes, do your saboteur assessment, which takes 5 minutes, and these are free, by the way, and get some other tools and resources. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Nick.
Well, thank you so much, Shirzad. That was a very worthwhile and interesting introduction to the topic. It gives us something interesting to think about with how we can actually do very real, specific things to increase our performance, both at work and away. I'm going to open it up for a couple of minutes just to take some questions. And very interesting question that just came in. Can you talk a bit about ways to identify saboteurs right when they become active so you can neutralize them before they overwhelm the work of the sages?
That's a great question, and basically the best way to do that is not through thinking, but through paying attention to your emotions. So the telltale sign of when saboteurs are beginning to hijack you is when any of those saboteur emotions are beginning to show up. So the anger, the shame, the guilt, the stress. Most of your stress is saboteur-generated. And Sage has very, very different feelings of curiosity, compassion, joy, creativity, all or the wondering that's in creativity. So basically, by paying attention to how you're feeling in the moment, you will begin to quickly catch whether a saboteur is beginning to hijack you. The reason you don't want to overthink this is because each of the saboteurs have lied to you and convinced you they're your friends. So if you try to think about it too much, ironically, you're shifting more and more into the survival brain. If you find yourself thinking really, really hard, you're actually more and more driving into the survival brain. The PQ brain does not feel hard. It feels relatively easy.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. Couple of questions just come in about the team context of using PQ. How do you go from increasing your PQ individually to building up team PQ, and how can you coach people on your team to sort of start thinking in a different way about developing themselves and as a result improving their performance?
I have, as you know, worked with literally hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, and so PQ applies really easily to the team concept. For one, just about every CEO I ever coached told me at some point, I'm very excited about working with you, and I want to bring you to work with my executive team, but I got to tell you, on my team there is Jack or there's Kathy, who is particularly difficult, is very controlling or very this or very that, and I'm not sure they're going to warm up to this kind of work. And after a while of working with these teams, what I realized actually is that the concept of the saboteur is one that takes away all of the awkwardness, because I go into a team, and I would encourage you to go into your team as a team leader and say, okay, guys, we all are suffering from saboteurs, every single one of us. Let's say mine is the judge and the hyper-rational. What's yours? It equalizes the conversation so that the team quickly goes to, oh, okay, we are all shooting ourselves in the foot. What's your way? This is my way. Rather than having to single out people that you think are particularly problematic. So I would do a saboteur assessment, make sure everybody does a saboteur assessment before the team meeting or retreat, and then going around and sharing yourself how you think the saboteur is getting in the way, and then as a team making commitments to how you can help each other intercept these saboteurs when they are showing up and how to shift to a different way.
That's a fascinating insight, Shirzad, because one of the questions we often get here at Rypple is all about how do you give constructive feedback at work? How do you have those difficult conversations with people on your team? And I think you're pointing to something that we often say, which is that if it becomes a regular and open part of your communication with your team, so rather than just a once-a-year performance review, but something that actually becomes a part of your weekly interaction with the people around you, where you share issues that you're having, and you solicit feedback from people on what you can do better, and you give feedback. It becomes a much less stressful interaction, and it can be focused on actually being much more effective and less sort of personal.
Absolutely. There are many teams around the world that after such a retreat, they actually have a one-liner, a one- or two-liner weekly report. As part of the weekly report, they do a PQ report. And in the report, it's about which of their saboteurs got in the way, and at what times were they successful in shifting to Sage, and what was the result. And at one point, they failed, and they were hijacked by the saboteur. So it's a continuous focus on the fact that we are trying to weaken one and strengthen the other, and it becomes a team focus rather than just an individual.
Exactly, and I think we have time for one more. There's sort of germane to what we do at Rypple. There's a question about ways that you might suggest for incorporating PQ into the performance evaluation process in the workplace?
I think the most important thing with the PQ work is that it shifts the attention to self-acknowledgement of what is not working rather than needing to be told what is not working. So if you want to connect it to performance evaluation, it would still ideally start with the person doing a self-assessment and others giving them assessment information about what saboteurs they see and when. Always give the person a chance to start themselves before you might want to disagree with, and we think there's a lot more of this that you're not seeing yourself. I would always start with the developmental focus and self-assessment before then bringing in other people's feedback.
That's such a great point. I mean, I think one of the massive changes that is happening, and you may agree with us in the workplace today, is that the social paradigm has meant that organizations are getting less hierarchical and more networked. And as a result of that, people have a lot more authority and a lot more control, but also a lot more accountability for their own careers and for taking control, and instead of just sitting back and waiting for someone else to evaluate them, to really take control of their own careers and say, you know, this is what I want to do, and if improving my PQ is one way that I can become more effective in my life and in my career, I'm going to take it upon myself to do so instead of waiting around for someone else to tell me what to do.
Great.
Well, I'd like to thank you again, Shirzad, for taking the time. I want to also quickly, before we say goodbye today, to let people know about some upcoming Rypple webinars. We will have, if you're interested in learning more about how you can use Rypple as a tool to deal with some of the issues and the challenges that we discussed today, we're going to be having a Intro to Rypple webinar on Wednesday, May the 30th at 3 p.m., and we're going to be sending out details of that to registrants. We also have a couple more webinars coming up in our leadership series, including a part 2 of today's webinar with Shirzad, where we will be focused specifically on sales teams and how to take some of the elements that Shirzad has been discussing today and really incorporating them into supercharging your sales team for success. And finally, you'll see our next webinar on June 12th with the authors of Get Lucky, where we will be discussing how work has changed and the future of work, and what you need to do to set yourself up for success in the workplace of the future. So thank you again to everyone for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on June the 12th. Take care.